This episode of Robservations is sponsored by The John Campea Show. Find The John Campea Show on YouTube or find the audio version wherever you get your podcasts. Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, Robert Meyer Burnett. I invite you to watch and listen to the Designing Hollywood podcast, brought to you by Martika Ibarra and the great, legendary Hollywood costume designer, Marilyn Vance. I am afforded the wonderful opportunity of co-hosting the show. If you are interested in the magic of Hollywood, the design of Hollywood, the clothes of Hollywood, watch the Designing Hollywood podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts from, or find the video version on the John Campea YouTube channel. That's right, the Designing Hollywood podcast. Why would you ever want to miss it, especially if you love the movies?
Hey, my name is King, or as some of you might know me better, Israel. I've gotten around, but hopefully you recognize me from my own channel, King Tannic. There's a new show coming to the Burnettwork that I think is pretty exciting. Welcome to the Otaku Experience, hosted by yours truly. There is going to be a weekly series where we dive into the news and the world of anime, manga, and whatever the heck else Japan has to offer us. The show will be pre-recorded and premiere on Thursdays at 2 p.m. Pacific Time or 5 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Burnettwork YouTube channel.
Robservations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination, and of course, the always as yet undefined existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, me, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I am robcasting at you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. This is Robservations episode number 854. You know, you really can't escape talk of AI these days. It's everywhere. But, you know, we science fiction fans, we imagination connoisseurs, we've been thinking about AI since we basically got out of the cradle. So much of science fiction and science fiction films have dealt with runaway technology, mankind being replaced by our betters. I mean, hell, the X-Men are not Homo sapiens, they're Homo superior. And they're not really AI unless you talk about Warlock, but we're always getting replaced. So all the way back to Fritz Lang's 1927, and even earlier, but I look at 1927 only because Metropolis is such a seminal film. And of course, that's where we got C-3PO from. McQuarrie based his sketches on Maria, or what was Maria. Why not, right? And of course, when Giorgio Moroder brought what was, well, the only existing Metropolis back and gave it to audiences in the 80s with a synth score and pop music. Well, I mean, a lot of people probably don't remember that, but I have those versions on Blu-ray. I'm not going to loan them to you, but I have them. So whether it's Replicants, whether it's Colossus, the Foreman Project, I mean, whether it's Robbie the Robot in 1957's Forbidden Planet, which Alan, one half of Lana and Alan talked about on Twitter, who's doing the great reviews, the Lana Ewan reviews. Alan, her husband, tweeted out about how much he loved Forbidden Planet. And of course, I do too. Forbidden Planet is basically prototype Star Trek. And yo, like Warner Brothers, it's your 100th anniversary. Help a brother out. Give me a little Forbidden Planet in 4K. You know what I'm talking about? Got any of those 4K Forbidden Planet discs lying around? No, you don't, because you haven't made it yet. Maybe you should. Why haven't the powers that be at Warner Brothers, maybe they'll do this for the holidays. Where is the big push of classic science fiction? When I say classic, I don't mean, but good science fiction movies. Where's Contact? Where's Forbidden Planet? I know Forbidden Planet's MGM, but I believe you still own it, don't you? Where's Forbidden Planet? Where's 2010? Where's Brainstorm? You know what I'm saying? I mean, Where's Altered States in 4K? Jordan Cronenweth, I don't know. Give it to me. Give it to me now. But anyway, so, the AI, a lot of talk about it. Where are we going to go? Is it going to replace us? What's happening? Who knows? I don't think when we're talking about things like Midjourney and Chat GPT, they're exactly AI. They're using AI as a as a buzzword, but I don't know if we can call it. Let's call it something else until we have true artificial intelligence. But anyway, a writer that I am particularly fond of, a woman named Naomi Klein. She's a Canadian activist. She's a professor. She's written a lot about climate change and eco-fascism and left-wing politics and corporate globalization. I first found her book No Logo, which was about globalization. And then I read her book, The Shock Doctrine, in 2007. So I'm a fan of Naomi Klein's work, both as a journalist and a filmmaker. As a matter of fact, her book, The Shock Doctrine, was made into there's a film that Alfonso Cuarón made, quick film, like short film based on it. So she's very interesting, and I really like her writing a lot and her global perspective. And I want to give a shout out, because I did not see this, to viewer and imagination connoisseur Evan Newman, who sent me this article. And I have to tell you, like I know on the John Campea show when he would say, if anybody wants to send me articles or send articles in, maybe it'll be the topic of today's shows. I've never really said that, but as many of you know, I always look for interesting articles to read and opine on. And some people do send me a lot of stuff. If you've got something you think I'd be interested in, I mean, it doesn't have to be about movies, television, video games, but if you think it's culturally adjacent to the interests of imagination connoisseurs, as AI is, hey, send it my way. Maybe, just maybe, I'll read your article on the show. Now, the reason that I keep thinking a lot about AI is obviously because of the writer's strike, and I'm terribly obsessed by the idea about what AI will do to the arts, specifically filmmaking, which is something I've spent my life aspiring to do, and then for the last 34 years eked out a meager living trying to make things, and I still would like to spend the rest of my life doing that. Hopefully I will be able to do that, but I don't know. So, AI concerns are pretty, they're at the forefront of my mind. They're obviously at the forefront of the Writers Guild strike. And it's here to say. So, but anyway, this is a long article. I really wanted to get into it and share it with you. I will be reading other people's letters they've sent in. And of course, if you have super chats, fire them in. And also, if you want to use the tip feature, the super chats have been wonky. I don't know what the difference is between using super chats or the tip feature. The link is in the description below if that's what you want to do. So here is this article that I found to be absolutely fascinating. AI machines aren't hallucinating, but their makers are. Tech CEOs want us to believe that generative AI will benefit humanity. They are kidding themselves. This was actually published yesterday, and it was published in The Guardian. So I want to get into this. Inside the many debates swirling around the rapid rollout of so-called artificial intelligence, there's a relatively obscure skirmish focused on the choice of the word hallucinate. This is the term that architects and boosters of generative AI have settled on to characterize responses served up by chatbots that are wholly manufactured or flat out wrong. Like, for instance, when you ask a bot for a definition of something that doesn't exist, and it rather convincingly gives you one, complete with made-up footnotes, no one in the field has yet solved what they call the hallucination problems. Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google and Alphabet, told an interviewer recently. That's true. But why call the errors hallucinations at all? Why not algorithmic junk or glitches? Well, hallucination refers to the mysterious capacity of the human brain to perceive phenomena that are not present, at least not in conventional materialist terms. By appropriating a word commonly used in psychology, psychedelics, and various forms of mysticism, AI's boosters, while acknowledging the fallibility of their machines, are simultaneously feeding the sector's most cherished mythology. That by building these large language models and training them on everything that we humans have written, said, and represented visually, they are in the process of birthing an animate intelligence on the cusp of sparking an evolutionary leap for our species. How else could bots like Bing and Bard be tripping out in there in the ether? Warped hallucinations are indeed afoot in the world of AI, however, but it's not the bots that are having them. It's the tech CEOs who unleash them, along with the phalanx of their fans who are in the grips of wild hallucinations, both individually and collectively. Here I am defining hallucination not in the mystical or psychedelic sense, mind-altered states that can indeed assist in accessing profound, previously unperceived truths. No, these folks are just tripping, seeing, or at least claiming to see, evidence that is not there at all, even conjuring entire worlds that will put their products to use for our universal elevation and education. Generative AI will end poverty, they tell us. It will cure all disease. It will solve climate change. It will make our jobs more meaningful and exciting. It will unleash lives of leisure and contemplation, helping us reclaim the humanity we have lost to late capitalist mechanization. It will end loneliness. It will make our governments rational and responsive. These, I fear, are the real AI hallucinations, and we have been hearing them on a loop ever since ChatGPT launched at the end of last year. There is a world in which generative AI, as a powerful predictive research tool and performer of tedious tasks, could indeed be marshaled to benefit humanity, other species, and our shared home. But for that to happen, these technologies would need to be deployed inside a vastly different economic and social order than our own. One that had at its purpose the meeting of human needs and the protection of the planetary systems that support all life. As those of us who are not currently tripping well understand, our current system is nothing like that. Rather, it's built to maximize the extraction of wealth and profit from both humans and the natural world, a reality that has brought us to what we might think of as capitalism's techno-necro stage. In the reality of hyper-concentrated power and wealth, AI, far from living up to all those utopian hallucinations, is much more likely to become a fearsome tool of further dispossession and despoilation. I'll dig into why that is, but first, it's helpful to think about the purpose the utopian hallucinations about AI are serving. What work are those benevolent stories doing in the culture as we encounter these strange new tools? Here is one hypothesis. They are the powerful and enticing cover stories for what may turn out to be the largest and most consequential theft in human history. Because what we are witnessing is the wealthiest companies in history, Microsoft, Apple, Google, Meta, Amazon, unilaterally seizing the sum total of human knowledge that exists in digital, scrapable form and walling it off inside proprietary products, many of which will take direct aim at the humans whose lifetime of labor trained the machines without giving those machines permission or consent. This should not be legal. In the case of copyrighted material that we now know trained the models, including The Guardian, this newspaper, various lawsuits have been filed that will argue that this was clearly illegal. Why, for instance, should a for-profit company be permitted to feed the paintings, drawings, and photographs of living artists into a program like Stable Diffusion or DALL-E 2, so it can then be used to generate doppelganger versions of those very artists' work without the benefits, with the benefits flowing to everyone but the artists themselves. The painter and illustrator Molly Crabapple is helping lead a movement of artists challenging this theft. AI art generators are trained on enormous data sets containing millions upon millions of copyrighted images, harvested without their creator's knowledge, let alone compensation or consent. This is effectively the greatest art heist in history, perpetrated by respectable-seeming corporate entities backed by Silicon Valley venture capital. It's daylight robbery, a new open letter she co-drafted states. The trick, of course, is that Silicon Valley routinely calls the theft disruption, and too often gets away with it. We know this move. Charge ahead into lawless territory, claim the old rules don't apply to your new tech, scream that regulation will only help China, all the while you get your facts solidly on the ground. By the time we all get over the novelty of these new toys and start taking stock of the social, political, and economic wreckage, the tech is already so ubiquitous that the courts and policymakers throw up their hands. We saw it with Google's book and art scanning, with Elon Musk's space colonization, with Uber's assault on the taxi industry, with Airbnb's attack on the rental market, with Facebook's promiscuity with our data. Don't ask for permission, the disruptors like to say. Ask for forgiveness, and lubricate the asks with generous campaign contributions. In The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, Shoshana Zuboff meticulously details how Google's Street View maps steamrolled over privacy norms by sending its camera-bedecked cars out to photograph our public roadways and the exteriors of our homes. By the time the lawsuits defending privacy rights rolled around, Street View was already so ubiquitous on our devices and so cool and so convenient that few courts outside Germany were willing to intervene. Now, the same thing that happened to the exterior of our homes is happening to our words, our images, our songs, our entire digital lives. All are concurrently being seized and used to train the machines to simulate thinking and creativity. These companies must know they're engaged in theft, or at least that a strong case can be made that they are. They're just hoping that the old playbook works one more time, that the scale of the heist is already so large and unfolding with such speed that courts and policymakers will once again throw up their hands in the face of the supposed inevitability of it all. It's also why their hallucinations about all of the wonderful things that AI will do for humanity are so important. Because those lofty claims disguise this mass theft as a gift, at the same time as they help rationalize AI's undeniable perils. By now, most of us have heard about the survey that asked AI researchers and developers to estimate the probability that advanced AI systems will cause human extinction or similarly permanent and severe disempowerment of the human species. Chillingly, the median response was that there was a 10% chance. How does one rationalize going to work and pushing out tools that carry such existential risks? Often, the reason given to us is that these systems also carry huge potential upsides, except that those upsides are, for the most part, hallucinatory. Let's dig into a few of the wilder ones. Now, before we do that, I think that this is a really excellent overview of where these new... It's very interesting. I find it interesting that at the end of last year, all of these systems were kind of dumped on us at the same time. In the early part of 2023, of course, ChatGPT became ubiquitous. Everybody started talking about it. People started using it. How many well, they're not stupid. How many videos do you have to watch as you flip through your reels on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok? You can make $10,000 a month using ChatGPT and a website you don't even have to monitor. You can make art and blah, blah, blah. And maybe all that's true. I mean, maybe it's true. I don't know. I haven't tried it. I've tried ChatGPT. I just haven't tried to make $10,000 a month doing it. Maybe that's something I should try. I don't know. I'm not against it. And, I've always been a futurist. I don't think you can be an imagination connoisseur and not look to technology to the future and see the great. I have seen nothing but advantages in the technology that has, my own life as a film editor. I edited my first feature film using technology in 1996. And it was a movie called The New Gods, directed by James Boyd. Actually, that's not true. The first movie I used in Avid to cut was a movie called Interruptions, directed by Jennifer Sommerfeld. And it was really interesting that I could literally by myself cut an entire feature film. And that was almost 30 years ago. And that was with early Avid technology, AVR 26, 27. And I couldn't have done it. And non-linear editing, the Avid, now you've got Adobe Premiere and Final Cut X, and of course, if you want to use it, DaVinci Resolve and other programs. I'm sure somebody's still cutting on Sony, talking about how great it is, and you know who you are if you're out there. But I just think that there's no reason to think that technology has only made our lives easier. But now the confluence of art meeting technology to the point of art being destroyed by technology is something different. They've talked about it before. They thought photography might destroy painting. They thought television might destroy movies. But this time, the actual art itself is, in fact, threatened. Real art might get destroyed. Real music. What's the incentive for young people to pick up already it's hard enough to get people to really sing and play instruments. But what happens when you don't need to do that at all? What happens when you can digitize your voice and augment it, and even though you're not a great singer, you can make a song that you sing the lead in using all of this new technology? When are the foundational principles like learning how to paint, learning how to draw, learning how to sing, learning how to play, learning how to write? With all of these tools, will there be any incentive for anyone to become a truly excellent painter or a truly excellent artist of any kind? I don't know. I do know that humans are, the things that are fast and easier, quicker, more seductive. Do they lead to the dark side? I don't know, but I suspect that they very much might. But I think that Naomi's doing a great job here breaking this out. And now, look, you don't have to believe. This is just something to consider. When I'm reading these articles, and I would hope a lot of the time, I really hope that people understand that I am not here to tell you what I think you should think. I am here to offer, the whole point of the show is to bring hopefully interesting and compelling information to get you to think about something. It's not my job to tell you what to think. And I think any great, not that I'm great, but anybody who truly believes in what they're saying is offering their opinion to you, and they expect you to roll it around in the old noggin. They expect you to find other alternative points of view to compare and contrast, because that's what's so exciting. That's why I read all different kinds of websites. People are like, wait a minute, you read an article from a Marxist magazine? Are you a Marxist? No, I'm not. But there's an interesting article in a Marxist magazine, just like there's really interesting articles all over the place from all sides. And I think the idea is to just present material that people can talk about and think about. And that's why I love reading the comments. So anyway, let me continue on with this article. So, Hallucination 1, AI will solve the climate crisis. Almost invariably topping lists of AI upsides is the claim that these systems will somehow solve the climate crisis. We've heard this from everyone from the World Economic Forum to the Council on Foreign Relations to Boston Consulting Group, which explains that AI can be used to support all stakeholders in taking a more informed and data-driven approach to combating carbon emissions and building a greener society. It can also be employed to rewrite global climate efforts toward the most at-risk regions. The former Google CEO Eric Schmidt, who coincidentally I was talking about last night, summed up the case when he told The Atlantic that AI's risks were worth taking. Because if you think about the biggest problems in the world, he said, they all are really hard. Climate change, human organizations, and so forth. So I always want people to be smarter. According to this logic, the failure to solve big problems like climate change is due to a deficit of smarts. Never mind that smart people, heavy with PhDs and Nobel Prizes, have been telling our governments for decades that needs to happen to get out of this mess. Slash our emissions, leave carbon in the ground, tackle the overconsumption of the rich and the underconsumption of the poor, because no energy source is free of ecological costs. The reason this very smart counsel has been ignored is not due to a reading comprehension problem, or because we somehow need machines to do our thinking for us. It's because doing what the climate crisis demands of us would strand trillions of dollars of fossil fuel assets while challenging the consumption-based growth model at the heart of our interconnected economies. The climate crisis is not, in fact, a mystery or riddle we haven't yet solved due to insufficiently robust data sets. We know what it would take, but it's not a quick fix. It's a paradigm shift. Waiting for machines to spit out a more palatable and or profitable answer is not a cure for this crisis. It's one more symptom of it. Clear away the hallucinations, and it looks far more likely that AI will be brought to market in ways that actively deepen the climate crisis. First, the giant servers that make instant essays and artwork from chatbots possible are an enormous and growing source of carbon emissions. Second, as companies like Coca-Cola start making huge investments to use generative AI to sell more products, it's becoming all too clear that this new tech will be used in the same ways as the last generation of digital tools. That what begins with lofty promises about spreading freedom and democracy ends up micro-targeting ads at us so that we all buy more useless, carbon-spewing stuff. And there is a third factor, this one a little harder to pin down. The more our media channels are flooded with deep fakes and clones of various kinds, the more we have a feeling of sinking into an informational quicksand. Geoffrey Hinton, often referred to as the godfather of AI because the neural net he developed more than a decade ago forms the building blocks of today's large language models, understands this well. He just quit a senior role at Google so that he could speak freely about the risks of the technology he helped create, including, as he told the New York Times, the risk that people will not be able to know what is true anymore. This is highly relevant to the claim that AI will help battle the climate crisis, because when we are mistrustful of everything we read and see in our increasingly uncanny media environment, we become even less equipped to solve pressing collective problems. The crisis of trust predates ChatGPT, of course, but there is no question that a proliferation of deepfakes will be accompanied by an exponential increase in already thriving conspiracy cultures. So what difference will it make if AI comes up with technological and scientific breakthroughs? If the fabric of shared reality is unraveling in our hands, we will find ourselves unable to respond with any coherence at all. And again, this is such a salient point, and I think that you can't hit this hard enough. We have all of this technology, and it's funny. I mean, you've got deep fake porn. You've got people in courtrooms saying reality, actual video, oh, that was deep faked, and it's already happening. We've got pizza commercials generated by AI. My beloved Star Trek and Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones Balenciaga ads that have shown up over the last month on the internet. I don't know who made them or why they made them. I don't know if it was a way to rehabilitate Balenciaga's canceled brand name or whatever. They're hilarious. But I look at those things and they're getting better and better and better. And if it just comes down to the fact that we can't believe anything, like it's going to get to the point where we talk to people on the phone and we're not going to know if it's actually them. You know, you'll be able to record your voice. At some point, you're like, I don't want to talk to anybody today. You just turn on an AI version of yourself and it has conversations that'll record for you. People won't even know they're not talking to you. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to get there anytime like tomorrow, but that's what's going to happen. And then we're going to forget to listen to them. We're never going to know who we supposedly talked to or what we talked about. And things are going to happen in our own lives that we don't even remember because it wasn't us doing them. Now, that might be a little extreme, but that's what great science fiction, fantasy, and horror has dealt with. I mean, it's so funny. You know, you look at Black Mirror is coming back for a 6th season. And what is a Black Mirror? I mean, I don't know if my phone will activate, but it just did. Imagine that the screen was black. I know it's a new phone. I haven't put anything on the front of it. Sorry. That's what our Black Mirrors are. And Black Mirror itself has been warning us of these kinds of cultural changes. That's one TV show. But we're headed in that direction. And what is that going to do to our political life? What is that going to do to our religious life? What is that going to do to our social lives? And we're not asking these questions. As a matter of fact, that's what they count on. And that's what this article is saying. Hallucination 2. AI will deliver wise governance. This hallucination summons a near future in which politicians and bureaucrats, drawing on the vast aggregated intelligence of AI systems, are able to see patterns of need and develop evidence-based programs that have greater benefits to their constituents. That claim comes from a paper published by the Boston Consulting Group's Foundation, but it is being echoed inside many think tanks and management consultancies. And it's telling that these particular companies, the firms hired by governments and other corporations to identify cost savings, often by firing large numbers of workers, have been the quickest to jump on the AI bandwagon. PwC, formerly PricewaterhouseCoopers, just announced a $1 billion investment. And Bain & Company, as well as Deloitte, are reportedly enthusiastic about using these tools to make their clients more efficient. As with the climate claims, it's necessary to ask, is the reason politicians impose cruel and ineffective policies that they suffer from lack of evidence? An inability to see patterns, as the BGC paper suggests? Do they not understand the human costs of starving public health care and pandemics, or failing to invest in non-market housing when tents fill our urban parks? Or of approving new fossil fuel infrastructure while temperatures soar? Do they need AI to make them smarter, to use Schmidt's term, or are they precisely smart enough to know who is going to underwrite their next campaign, or if they stray, bankroll their rivals? It would be awfully nice if AI could sever the link between corporate money and reckless policy making, but that link has everything to do with why companies like Google and Microsoft have been allowed to release their chatbots to the public despite the avalanche of warning and known risks. Schmidt and others have been on a years-long lobbying campaign telling both parties in Washington that if they aren't free to barrel ahead with generative AI, unburdened by serious regulation, then Western powers will be left in the dust by China. Last year, the top tech companies spent a record $70 million to lobby Washington, more than the oil and gas sector. And that sum, Bloomberg News notes, is on top of the millions spent on the wide array of trade groups, nonprofits, and think tanks. And yet, despite their intimate knowledge of precisely how money shapes policy in our national capitals, when you listen to Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, maker of ChatGPT, talk about the best case scenarios for his products, all of this seems to be forgotten. Instead, he seems to be hallucinating a world entirely unlike our own, one in which politicians and industry make decisions based on the best data and would never put countless lives at risk for profit or geopolitical advantage. Which brings us to another hallucination. And see, I don't see this article as fear-mongering. I think it's just putting out things that are already in existence, and as our technological age barrels ever forward, we are not thinking about how it affects us. Look, we are seeing, if you look at Gen Z and certain millennials, you are seeing the catastrophic effects of what social media has done to an entire generation of young people. You read by any metric, everything from Adderall usage to anxiety, well, to any kind of usage, to the explosion of people who are suddenly gender dysphoric or questioning. All of these things, these are changes to people themselves, have not been good. It has not helped people become more secure in themselves, or sort of batten down the hatches and hey, work hard. Where's the next generation of Nobel laureates going to come from? I don't know. But, having lived with two girls and watched them grow up in their teen years, it's been very interesting to see. And in a way, a little sad, because they're beginning to realize what costs social media took upon them, and they didn't know it at the time. So where are we at? Is anyone asking these questions? Certainly in 2007, we couldn't get iPhones fast enough, or now, depending on what phone you use, can you imagine your life without it? What's that done to all of us? Well, nobody was able to study it, so we don't know. So all of us are the first test group, well, at least the last 20 years we have been. And it's going to be curious to see where is the generation that grew up with Jonathan Haidt's work, if you read his stuff about education and where kids are at today. Where are we going to be in 20 years? I don't know. No one knows. But hey, what can you say? Just like all of this, that was literally, in a way, it was all kind of dropped on us at once. Let's just set it all out into the wild and we'll pick up the pieces later. Was that the best thing? I don't know. But it's interesting to contemplate. Hallucination number 3. Tech giants can be trusted not to break the world. Asked if he was worried about the frantic gold rush ChatGPT has already unleashed, Altman said he is, but added sanguinely, hopefully it will all work out. Of his fellow tech CEOs, the ones competing to rush out their rival chatbots, he said, I think the better angels are going to win out. Better angels? At Google? I'm pretty sure the company fired most of those because they were publishing critical papers about AI or calling the company out on racism and sexual harassment in the workplace. More better angels have quit in alarm, most recently Hinton. That's because, contrary to the hallucinations of the people profiting most from AI, Google does not make decisions based on what's best for the world. It makes decisions on what's best for Alphabet's shareholders, who do not want to miss the latest bubble, not when Microsoft, Meta, and Apple are already all in. Hallucination 4. Will AI liberate us from drudgery? If Silicon Valley's benevolent hallucinations seem plausible to many, there is a simple reason for that. Generative AI is currently in what we might think of as the faux socialism stage. This is part of a now familiar Silicon Valley playbook. First, create an attractive product, a search engine, a mapping tool, a social network, a video platform, ride share. Give it away for free, or almost free for a few years with no discernible viable business model. Play around with the bots, they tell us. See what fun things you can create. Make lots of lofty claims about how you're not only doing it because you want to create a town square or an information commons or connect the people, all while spreading freedom and democracy and not being evil. Then, watch as people get hooked using these free tools and your competitors declare bankruptcy. Once the field was clear, introduce the targeted ads, the constant surveillance, the police and military contracts, the black box data sales, and the escalating subscription fees. Many lives and sectors have been decimated by earlier iterations of this playbook, from taxi drivers to rental markets to local newspapers. With the AI revolution, these kinds of losses could look like rounding errors, with teachers, coders, visual artists, journalists, translators, musicians, care workers, and so many others facing the prospect of having their incomes replaced by glitchy code. Don't worry, the AI enthusiasts hallucinate. It will be wonderful. Who likes work anyway? Generative AI won't be the end of employment, we are told, only boring work, with chatbots helpfully doing all the soul-destroying repetitive tasks and humans merely supervising them. Altman, for his part, sees a future where work can be a broader concept, not something you have to do to be able to eat, but something you do as creative expression and a way to find fulfillment and happiness. That's an exciting vision of a more beautiful, leisurely life, one many leftists share, including Karl Marx's son-in-law, Paul Lafargue, who wrote a manifesto titled The Right to be Lazy. But we leftists also know that if earning money is no longer be life's driving imperative, then there must be other ways to meet our creaturely needs for shelter and sustenance. A world without crappy jobs mean that rent has to be free, and healthcare has to be free, and every person has to have an inalienable economic right, or rights. And then suddenly we aren't talking about AI at all. We're talking about socialism. Because we do not live in a Star Trek-inspired, rational, humanist world that Altman seems to be hallucinating. We live under capitalism, and under that system, the effects of flooding the market with technologies that can plausibly perform the economic tasks of countless working people is not that those people are suddenly free to become philosophers or artists. It means that those people will find themselves staring into the abyss with actual artists among the first to fall. That is the message of Crabapple's open letter, which calls on artists, publishers, journalists, editors, and journalism union leaders to take a pledge for human values against the use of generative AI images and commit to supporting editorial art made by people and not server farms. The letter, now signed by hundreds of artists, journalists, and others, state that all but the most elite artists find their work at the risk of extinction. And according to Hinton, the godfather of AI, there is no reason to believe that the threat won't spread. The chatbots take away the drudge work, but it might take away more than that. And this, I would say, is at the crux, one of the cruxes of why the WGA is on strike. I mean, already there are things that chatbots can do. Paul Chatto, in a pretty good review, pretty good video he put out today or yesterday, was talking about the fact that right now a lot of writers don't even do the research they need to do when they're looking into historical fiction. But if you have a chatbot generate a first-generation draft of a script, a first pass, words on paper draft, whatever, that you're going to intend to go rewrite, well, you can use ChatGPT to get the historical data put into your script without any kind of research. Whether it's correct or not, that's another story. I've noticed when I played with ChatGPT and asked it things where history was a part of what I'd asked, it frequently gets dates wrong. It gets actually all information wrong a lot. Delve into it. Play with it yourself and see. I don't know why that is, but you got to be careful. Now already people think what they're getting out of ChatGPT is true. Man, I wouldn't turn in a ChatGPT generated 5-paragraph essay in high school, let me tell you that. I actually like writing 5-paragraph essays. I had great teachers who talked about how to do them well. And that a 5-paragraph essay and knowing how to write one well is a skill that served me well, even in terms of how I think about things. So anyway, Crabapple and her co-authors write, generative AI art is vampirical, feasting on past generations of artwork, even as it sucks the lifeblood from living artists. But there are ways to resist. We can refuse to use these products and organize to demand that our employers and governments reject them as well. A letter from prominent scholars of AI ethics, including Timnit Gebru, who was fired by Google in 2020 for challenging workplace discrimination, lays out some of the regulatory tools that governments can introduce immediately, including full transparencies about what data sets are being used to train the models. The authors write, not only should it always be clear when we are encountering synthetic media, but organizations building these systems should also be required to document and disclose the training data and models. So, where was I? The training data and models and architecture, we should be building machines that work for us instead of adapting society to be machine readable and writable. Though tech companies would like us to believe that it is already too late to roll back this human-replacing mass mimicry product, there are highly relevant legal and regulatory precedents that can be enforced. For instance, the U.S. Federal Trade Commission forced Cambridge Analytica, as well as Everelbrum, the owner of a photo app, to destroy entire algorithms found to have been trained on illegitimate. Let me read this again. The owner of a photo app to destroy entire algorithms found to have been trained on illegitimately appropriated data and scraped photos. In its early days, the Biden administration made many bold claims about regulating big tech, including cracking down on the theft of personal data to build proprietary algorithms. See this? Sorry about that. I didn't mean to do that. With a presidential election fast approaching, now would be a good time to make good on those promises and avert the next set of mass layoffs before they happen. In a world of deep fakes, mimicry loops, and worsening inequality is not an inevitability. It's a set of policy choices. We can regulate the current form of vampiric chatbots out of existence and begin to build the world in which AI's most exciting promises would be more than Silicon Valley hallucinations. Because we trained the machines, all of us, but we never gave our consent. They fed on humanity's collective ingenuity, inspiration, and revelations, along with our more venal traits. These models are enclosure and appropriation machines, devouring and privatizing our individual lives as well as our collective intellectual and artistic inheritances. And their goal never was to solve climate change or make our governments more responsible or our daily lives more leisurely. It was always to profit off mass immiseration, which, under capitalism, is the glaring and logical consequence of replacing human functions with bots. Is all of this overly dramatic? A stuffy and reflexive resistance to exciting innovation? Why expect the worst? Altman reassures us nobody wants to destroy the world. Perhaps not. But as the ever-worsening climate and extinction crisis show us every day, plenty of powerful people and institutions seem to be just fine, knowing that they are helping to destroy the stability of the world's life support systems, so long as they can keep making the record profits that they believe will protect them and their families from the worst effects. Altman, like many creatures of Silicon Valley, is himself a prepper. Back in 2016, he boasted, "I have guns, gold, potassium iodide, antibiotics, batteries, water, gas masks from the Israeli Defense Force, and a big patch of land in Big Sur I can fly to." I'm pretty sure those facts say a lot more about what Altman actually believes about the future he is helping unleash than whatever flowery hallucinations the future he is helping to unleash he is choosing to share in press interviews. And this was, of course, written by Naomi Klein and she is a Guardian U.S. columnist and contributing writer. She's the best-selling author of No Logo and The Shock Doctrine, and the professor of climate justice and co-director of the Center for Climate Justice at the University of British Columbia. Anyway, I wanted to share that article because I found it fascinating. Now, do I believe everything that's in it? Do I think that her alarmist stance is something we should be running and screaming and yelling about? I don't know. All I know, I think it's worth thinking about. And I think she has a lot of great points that she's made in this particular article. And it's fascinating to read. And, you know, as people are striking over their own livelihood over the possibility of AI taking away the money that they make as writers, these are all very relevant points. The problem is our civilization, you know, human beings, all we care about is how are we going to pay for the roof over our heads? How are we going to get our next meal? How are we going to take care of our kids? At the end of the day, those are the questions most people concern themselves with. And I understand that. But now the problem is there's a whole strata of human beings that don't have to worry about those things that are also making the policy. And the policy they're making is not about people that have to feed their children. They're not the people that, you know, I'll give you an example. In California, we have an enormous homeless problem. There have been things passed to allow people to build housing for the homeless. The problem is here in California, everybody wants a taste. Nobody wants people. If we pass $1 billion, appropriations bill or something to build housing for the homeless or low income housing, everybody wants a taste. So it costs. We found out last year $800,000 to build 1 unit of low income housing. Come on. That's because everybody gets taste. The people that are actually building the low income housing aren't willing to do their work pro bono, or at least for just the materials, the cost of materials, because why would they? That's not profitable. It's just like, our homeless problem. Our homeless problem is not that we don't have enough low income housing. Our homeless problem is because you have people that have mental health issues and are addicted that are on the streets, and they wouldn't know what to do with low-income housing if they had it. They can't take care of themselves. And until we take care of the underlying, that's not to say there are people that are legitimately, they've lost their homes, they found themselves in a bad way, but it's the homeless problem, the real homeless problem that we're facing is people that are addicted and people that are mentally ill because there's no money to be spent to actually help these people. I mean, a real concerted effort to put people in hospitals and get the care they need, or get the people that are, whether you're addicts, get them into clinics and pay for all that. The problem is our entire civilization has become too profit motivated. And no one's fixing the problems. And this is sort of a uniquely American thing, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. And, you can't just throw money at a problem. You can't. You have to also throw up the resources and the human manpower and people power to solve problems as well. Well, with the AI question, I would just say to everybody, what are we going to do about it? How is it going to affect us? I don't know. But it's interesting to think about and perhaps get involved. And the Writers Guild of America right now is marching to deal with this. And I would say that, if I was running Hollywood, I would say, okay, let's preserve the cinematic art form, the television art form. Let's preserve our stories that we've been telling for 100 years. If you're a Warner Brothers or Disney employee, you're both celebrating your 100-year anniversaries. Why not just have Hollywood say, okay, you know what? When it comes to the creation and writing of our properties that we're going to make, we're not going to use AI at all. Just say that flat out, full stop. Nope. If you want to write for us, no AI. No, I understand. I understand how AI can be a boon. I've used it myself. It's incredibly helpful. Chatbots are incredibly helpful to write things. First drafts of things. You've got to go in and write them. They do a lot of the drudgery work. But I would say if you're a writer in Hollywood and the studios are paying you, the studios, and they truly honor writers, they should just say no AI at all. I don't know how long it would last. I don't even know if that would work, but my first inclination would be to say that. Anyway, Superhero Displays sends in a tip. My old friend, how are you, sir? Multiple live Robservations. Just like the good old days. All is right with the world again. Anyone that knows anything about Superhero Displays knows the impact this has had on my recent life. So I have to ask, are you bringing back Fully Articulated? Yes. Az and I have been talking about that. We were supposed to come back with Fully Articulated last week. I totally spaced. I totally forgot we talked about doing it. So we're bringing it back a week from Thursday. There will be a Fully Articulated at 10 a.m. on Thursday. What is that, May 18th? I'm not sure. I'd have to look. May 15th, 16th, 17th. I think May 18th. So that's when Fully Articulated comes back. Still working. I wanted to launch my chat show, the Imagination Connoisseurs show, for my birthday on Monday. I can't do that. I need more time. So we are going to bring back Whining About Movies. Elizabeth and I are going to start whining about movies again. So, and we've got Lana Ewan reviews. We've got more shows. We got Que Pasa BGS. We got the Otaku Experience. So there's a lot of shows happening. So we're going to have fun, people. It's going to be a blast. I promise. A lot happening on the Burnettwork. Hopefully we'll find a show for everybody. Nick Parrish says, what's up, Rob? Hot take. The two summer movies I'm most confident will cross 1 billion outside of Spider-Man are Flash and Rise of the Beasts. I think that's a good bet. I think it's probably a good bet. You know, I would bet on Flash to cross 1 billion, although there is definitely superhero fatigue in the air. Call it what you want, but we'll see. Having seen Flash, I can tell you it is wildly entertaining. I really enjoyed watching Flash. It put a smile on my face the whole time. And it's actually quite interesting. And yeah, it's really compelling. Shogun Orta says, I think AI is like a bomb in some ways. We have to build it because every country is. Also, there was a chance with nukes that the whole world would blow up. Small chance, but not zero. Like AI potentially being bad. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Oh, hang on a second. You know what? This this is a long question and it went off the page. Shogun Orta. You know, when I see Orta, I think of Panzer Dragoon Orta. Remember that was the Xbox game? I love that game. So Shogun Orta says, I think AI is like a bomb in some ways. We have to build it because every other country is. Also, there was a chance with nukes that the whole world would blow up. Small chance, but not zero. Like AI potentially being bad. Okay, I think I got it. Yeah, I mean, look, I can't wait to see Oppenheimer. They didn't know. They didn't know if they were going to blow up the world or not. And still they detonated that bomb. Crazy. Man sends in a super chat and says, my man Rob, I love your thoughts on all things Hollywood. Well, thank you. You know, I don't know how much Hollywood's going to be happening in the next couple months. Hopefully we'll find out. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't know. The Robo Producer says, happy birthday, Rob. Rob, happy birthday. Mine is this month too. You, the man. Well, thank you. I appreciate being the man. Superhero Display says, fully articulated returns. Woohoo! Yes. Yes, it does. Or as on my shirt says, riffs. Right. Anyway, that's a Warriors reference. Groovy Don't Play has been a member for 11 months, and he's an imagination connoisseur. Well, thanks for being a member, Groovy Don't Play. There is, remember, a membership chat coming up this week on Saturday at 11 a.m. So there you go. And if you're a member, join us. A Ghostwriter says, I plan on starting an entertainment company. I'll have it in every single employee contract. No AI. If used, be labeled a plagiarist and blacklisted. That's pretty hardcore. Pretty hardcore, but I can see it. Look, here's the thing. it is clear to me that chatbots and things like that can be very helpful. They really can. They can be very helpful to use for first drafts. I mean, I get it. I understand how it can be used. I can already see the potential. The potential is great. But I just think in the long run, at the end of the day, you still have to understand your fundamentals. And can people do math anymore? Can people read anymore? Can they read well enough? I don't know. It's not enough to me. It's not enough to be literate is not just to know how to read. To be literate is to understand and comprehend what you've read. And I think that's more important. You've got to be literate. You have to be. So our friend Irene Jobson says, today was a very memorable day in more ways than one. Cheers to that. I love y'all so much. Irene, when you say today was a memorable day, I kind of expect like somebody giving you a full body massage, your husband, of course, giving you a full body massage with your favorite oil and then spending the next 2 or 3 hours getting busy, if you know what I'm saying, because you know that you've created that persona here around these parts, and I love you for it. So when you say that today was a memorable day in more ways than one, cheers to that. I love you all so much. I want to believe that happened. I want you and your husband. I believe right now you're sitting there together, basking in the afterglow with a glass of wine in your hand, and you're going to go for round 4 later after the show's over, though. Stick around for the chat. That's what I want to believe, because that makes me happy. I love you too. Groovy Don't Play says, hey, Fave, have you seen From? I like it. It's funny. I have seen From, but only the first season. And I don't know if the second season has started yet. And the reason I watched the first season was on the John Campea show. They sponsored us for a while, From. And John watched it, and he came in, and he's like, I was reluctant to take the sponsorship on, and I didn't want to do it if I didn't like the show, but it's pretty good. And I watched it, and I'm like, it is pretty good. I really like that. I think that's definitely something that is good. I'm into it. I hope I get this right. Zachary Zabailey says, documentary opening, montage of Chat GPT news bites of the past 4 months, leading to the writer's strike and AI concerns. Title, AI World Part 1, followed by Part 2 and then Part 3. And the great thing is, Zachary, you could actually use whatever AI scraping program to actually make that opening montage. I think that's a great idea. And leading up to the writer's strike is pretty interesting. I think I like that. I would watch that documentary. I would be in. The Robo Producer says, Return of the Jedi 40th anniversary. Awesome. Thoughts? Well, as people know, Return of the Jedi is certainly not my favorite Star Wars movie. And it's my least favorite of the trilogy, the original trilogy. But I think it's cool that it's been re-released in theaters and people are going, I've talked to a lot of people that it was the first time that they've ever seen it in a theater. And if you think back to, it's been 26 years since the special edition was re-released in theaters, or the special edition first came out in theaters in 97. So look, as much as I might not be a fan of Return of the Jedi, there's a lot of people in the world that are, and I love that people are going back to the movie theater and seeing Jedi. How cool is that? I mean, and there's kids that weren't even born 26 years ago, and they get to go see Return of the Jedi in the theater. Somebody said the other day they went and took their mom, and how excited they were. It's cool. It's cool. Thomas Logan says, Bobby, you know what AI will never be able to replicate? Hamburger the motion picture. Isn't it just Hamburger the movie? Hamburger the motion picture, because AI will never understand humanity's true essence. Not yet. But wait until the singularity occurs. Wait until AI becomes self-aware. What Ray Kurzweil was predicting. Then all bets are off. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. And I'll tell you something. I think that Spike Jonze's movie Her, where Scarlett Johansson is the voice of an operating system, That to me is probably one of the most realistic looks at where AI is going, at least now, and how it can culturally impact us. I think, and in terms of what the AI, what the sentient system, the operating system or the sentient partner, call it what you want, I think it's pretty bang on. Her is one of my favorite science fiction films of the last 20 years, along with things like Children of Men or Never Let Me Go or Ex Machina. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff out there. Tom Jr. Jackson says, you missed Zachary Zabale's, or is it Bailey? Zabale's super chat. Is there another one? Let me go look. I only see that one, Tom. But if there's another one, I'll keep looking. Ghost Rider says, if you let on the randos this weekend, I'll hop on and clarify my stance, or you can send me a link via email. It's on my card I gave to you in Vegas. Ah, yes, Ghost Rider. That would be fun. It'd be good to have you on the show. I don't know if I'm going to bring the randos on, but that's good. Ghost Rider also says, I'm off Friday and Sunday. Let's have a conversation. I'm into that. That'd be fun. I think we absolutely should do that. So for those of you who don't know, on midnights after Midnight Musings at midnight my time, I sometimes bring on randos, although there's a rumor somewhere that maybe we'll do a Midnight Metal. I don't know. Dave Parker might be coming back. Who knows? Joe Panora says, Friday the 13th, the original, is 43 years old today. Are you a fan? It's my favorite. Oh, still my favorite. I love the original Friday the 13th. I saw it opening weekend. It was Friday the 13th was my birthday movie in 1980. My parents took me and my friends. It was fucking awesome. So yeah, I love Friday the 13th. You're all doomed. Oh, hi. It's so good. That's a very random quote from Friday the 13th. If you know the movie, I am a fan. Yes, I am. I am a fan, Sam. I am. No, that's good stuff. Now, I told you I got some letters to read. So why don't I read some letters for you letter writers out there and see what I've got cooking. Here's a good one. Average Joe of the Undead. You know what? He wants me to read this on Midnight Musings, but I think I'm going to read it here because it's good. Horror helps the healing. A quick thought and words of encouragement from a horror fan. Hey, Rob. So at the beginning of this year, my wife of 8 years left me. I never saw that coming. More importantly is how I've been dealing with it. Horror. The genre of horror has been a huge help in getting through it day by day. I always loved the genre, and this kind of helped me return to it. Movies, books, games, I love all of it. It got me thinking, why does it help so much? I came to the conclusion, I think there's a positive feeling in seeing ourselves and characters who can escape or overcome something so unimaginably horrible and come out on the other side. It gives one hope that you can make it to the daylight, just like they did. So for whoever's out there who needs to hear it right now, it's going to be okay. You'll escape whatever's chasing you. I believe in you because you're the final girl in your own story, and we are all rooting for you. Also, your friend Dave Parker's movie, The Dead Hate the Living, was my intro into horror as a young kid. Well, let me just tell you, Average Joe of the Undead, I sent this letter to Dave so he could read that. I haven't spoken to him since I sent him the letter, but I'm sure he very much appreciates hearing that from you. Listen, man, I think any imagination connoisseur knows that I, too, when bad things... I mean, my wife didn't leave me abruptly, but when we separated, and eventually got divorced, it was... all of this media is helpful. The stuff that we love, it fills your mind. It takes your mind off of things, and you can immerse yourself in flights of fancy, and I think part of being an imagination connoisseur is that's kind of why we become that way, because these things mean something to us. It gives us something to look forward to and something to like. I'm just happy that you found, rather than say turning to something I'm prone to do, alcohol, which I love, or other kind of recreational drugs, you didn't abuse it, and you went back into imaginative pursuits. I mean, the great thing, I've always thought something interesting about horror that a lot of people have disagreed with me about. But in terms of being a humanist, and I'm a humanist, I've often said that horror, and even though horror sometimes ends on a very apocalyptic note, I've always found horror to be a very uplifting genre, because at the end of the day, great horror has human beings with resolve and strength, human beings fighting against the dying of the light, against sometimes insurmountable evil forces. But they still persevere. They still do it. And even though The Thing might have been defeated at the end of John Carpenter's The Thing, you have Childs and McReady sitting there. Oh, let's just sit here and see what happens. You don't know. Carpenter calls that one of his Apocalypse trilogy movies. His Apocalypse trilogy is The Thing, Prince of Darkness, and In the Mouth of Madness. But still, you're rooting for those people. So, Average Joe of the Undead, I'm sorry about the tumultuous nature of your personal life, but I'm glad that you found solace in horror, because there are worse things you could do. As Rizzo said, there are worse things I could do than go with a boy or two. See, only on Robservations do you have somebody like me singing a little bit of the Pink Lady Leader, her song. I don't know. Crazy. But I'm happy you're in a better place, man. And it'll get better, just like Howard Jones said or sang. But thanks for the, thank you for, that was very nice. That was very cool letter. Let's see. Here's a letter. Vincent from France. This is a Let's Get Physical Media letter. I think I already read that. We already read this, so I won't read this again. This comes from Gerald Preston Thompson. A defense of your most hated sequel trilogy plot detail. Wow, this is a long one. This should be interesting. Claim. The First Order gaining control over the galaxy so quickly after the Empire's defeat in Return of the Jedi makes the heroes, Han, Luke, and Leia, seem incompetent. Refutation. While it's understandable that some fans may question the rapid rise of the First Order, it is important to consider the complexity of the political landscape and the challenges faced by our beloved heroes, Han, Luke, and Leia. The claim that their actions or abilities are diminished or undermined does not give full credit to the circumstances they confronted and the long-lasting effects of war. Post-war chaos and power vacuum, the fall of the Galactic Empire and Return of the Jedi left a power vacuum in the galaxy. Systems were left in disarray, and various factions vied for control. The Empire was a vast organization with a strong grip on the galaxy, and it was only natural that remnants of its regime would attempt to regain power. The First Order capitalized on this chaos and rose from the ashes, presenting a new threat that our heroes had to face. Guerrilla tactics and hidden operations, the First Order operated covertly, lurking in the shadows while building their forces and resources. They took advantage of secrecy and deception to rebuild their military might. It is important to note that our heroes, particularly Han, Luke, and Leia, dedicated themselves to protecting the New Republic and nurturing a new generation of Jedi. They were engaged in battles that extended beyond the visible conflict, working tirelessly to prevent the resurgence of dark forces. Limited resources and experience, after the Battle of Endor, the Rebel Alliance transitioned into the New Republic, aiming to restore democracy and rebuild the galaxy. However, this transition was not without its challenges. The New Republic faced difficulties in obtaining sufficient resources and maintaining a strong military presence. On the other hand, the First Order, with its secret backing and access to the remnants of the Empire's infrastructure, was able to establish a formidable military force quickly. The heroes, despite their valiant efforts, were at a disadvantage in terms of resources and experiences in combating this emerging threat. Personal struggles and sacrifices. The heroes of the original trilogy, such as Han, Luke, and Leia, faced personal hardships and sacrifices that impacted their ability to directly confront the First Order. Luke Skywalker, for example, went into self-imposed exile due to the guilt and shame he felt over the failure of his Jedi Order. Han Solo and Leia Organa faced their own trials, including the loss of their son to the dark side. These emotional burdens took a toll on them, making it challenging to actively combat the rising threat of the First Order. In conclusion, the swift rise of the First Order should be seen as a testament to the complexity of the post-war galaxy and the challenges faced by our heroes. Their actions and sacrifices were not in vain, as they laid the groundwork for the resistance against the oppressive forces that threatened. Well, let me tell you, Gerald Preston Thompson, that's great. And I think that was a very eloquently worded. I thought it was great. That's a great summation. Here's the thing: when you go from Return of the Jedi to The Force Awakens, and you go from a victory to a reset, it doesn't really work, and it does make our characters look foolish, because wouldn't they also know all of those things? You would have they would go into world building, or they would go into nation building and ally building context, and why would anybody allow? How big was the construction project where they built Starkiller Base? It had to have been not since the Death Star was a bigger thing built, and it was built within striking distance of the part of the New Republic. Why would anybody allow that? I mean, it's not like the First Order was operating in secret. So here's my problem. It's not that I think everything you said is exactly what would have happened. But what I don't like is that you go from the end of Return of the Jedi 30 years later, you jump right ahead, and you're back to square one, to the point of where the First Order is able to use Starkiller Base and take out not one but 5 planets. Look, let me tell you, that turns Luke, Leia, and they're all part of the Resistance now. They're schmucks. The problem with The Force Awakens and the entire Disney trilogy is everyone's a schmuck. Everyone. Han Solo, it doesn't change the fact that, the Millennium Falcon's, Ucker Plunt's got it over there on his planet. What the hell's anybody been doing? You've turned everybody. I get where you're coming from, and I don't disagree with you, but you don't go from Return of the Jedi to reset the galaxy and put our characters in the exact same place they were at when we last left them, where they have to start all over again. It's not a video game. We should be given a little bit more credit as an audience, and what the trilogy should have been about is exactly what you're talking about. Is all of those things, and we see how that happened. So, anyway, but I don't disagree with you. It's good. So, yeah. Irene Jobson says, I was born Friday the 13th, February 1987. All right, Irene. I don't doubt that. 87. Oh, my God. My youngest girlfriend graduated from high school in 87. Oh, wow, that's crazy. Danny Dank says, via Deadline, the DGA drops a negotiations video. Ooh, I'll have to go check that out. I want to go see that. I think it's Zachary Zabeli. I want to say Zabeli, right? Burnettwork Concept Showcase. Rob showcases short films and short documentaries of members that are aspiring filmmakers and offers expert commentary. Well, although we didn't give out the awards, we did have a film festival. We had the first annual Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. And you can see all the entries with the exception of one on the channel. So I think it's a great idea. 101 Johnny says, find my letter, Rob. Look for the Jiro Dan in the title. Okay. Well, let me search. Let's see. Jiro Dan. Jiro Dan. Let's see. That's not Jiro Dan. Let's see. Jiro Dan. I'm looking. No. Nope, that's not there. Is your letter on Twitter? Is that where you sent me it? I'll look on Twitter and I'll see because I'll read it. I will read it if it's from Jiro Dan. No results for Jiro Dan there. I don't know where did you send it to me? Let's go back. Message requests. And I'm looking for Jiro Dan. And I'm looking, and I'm looking, and I'm looking. I don't see it. Jiro Dan. I'm still looking. Jiro Dan. No results for Jiro Dan, and I don't have it in my email. And I'm looking. Jiro Dan. Nope. All results for Jiro Dan. Hold on. I found it. I found your letter, Jiro Dan. Yeah, okay. Jiro Dan's letter. I found it. Let's read what Jiro Dan has to say, shall we? I think now. Hang on a second. I want to say. Let me just make sure. Yeah, okay. March 26th. All right. This letter's from Jiro Dan. Dear Rob and the Post-Geek Singularity. Hello. You may remember me from your episode that celebrated the anniversary of Superman Returns with your friend Brian Singer on call to talk about the film. I left a From the Heart super chat to let you and Mr. Singer know my appreciation for Superman Returns, as well as my appreciation of the Post-Geek Singularity. You have come a long way since that episode. I've been watching and listening to you, our existential Mr. Rogers, and the rest of the cast of the PGS as it has grown. Though I haven't been able to keep up with everything as it has unfolded, and I truly haven't interacted with the rest of the PGS at all, I still feel as though I'm part of it in a small way. Rob, I write this letter with a collected mind but a sad heart, for another star has fallen from the atmosphere of Earth's sky. Many stars have been falling lately. Kevin Conroy, Lance Reddick, to name a few, but even yesterday was the one-year anniversary of the death of the young rising star voice actor Billy Kometz, who would be known to those who are fans of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Lego's Monkey Kid, Rising of the Shield Hero, Promare. It was on this day, March 23rd, remembering one of those fallen stars, that I learned that yet another star had fallen the day before, on March 22nd. This star may not be known to you or many in the PGS. This star rose in the eastern sky above the island nation of Japan. And this star was a pillar of the legendary franchise known as the Ultra series, or now the Ultraman series. And this star was known as Jiro Dan. His real name was Hideo Murata. I think it's Murata. Many actors in Japan still have stage names. He was 75 years old and was diagnosed with lung cancer back in 2017. His death hit me hard. Every death I've mentioned so far has deeply touched me in some way, and to me, the passing of Jiro Dan could be similarly compared to that of Kevin Conroy, as both were important representatives of the franchise they were known for. While Conroy was the first and only actor to portray Batman in the DC animated universe created by Bruce Timm and Paul Dini, Mr. Conroy's passing follows that of Adam West. That is to say, Conroy's star follows after the stars that lead the way. Jiro Dan, however, is a first for the Ultraman series. He was not the first actor to die altogether in the series, nor is he the first major cast of actors to pass on, but he is the first of the original generation of actors who played the lead heroes of the Ultraman franchise. He is the first face of these legends to pass on. Please let me further explain what the Ultraman series is and how it came to be. It was the first creation of the Tsuburaya production company, founded by the Tokatsu, this is special filming, wizard Ije Tsuburaya, the man who brought the original Godzilla films to life with his special effects. The Ultraman, I have a great book on him too, right over there. The Ultraman series started in 1965 with the black and white experiential show known as Ultra Q. a series that was something of a mix between the existential exploring of Rod Serling's The Twilight Zone and the kaiju as nature allegory of Godzilla. The name Ultra Q was chosen because of the 1964 Tokyo Olympics, where their international scoring for gymnastics worked on a 3-level scale of A, B, and C, where level C was considered the highest level of difficulty for a particular discipline or routine. A Japanese journalist during that time claimed that the participating Japanese gymnasts were striving for a score greater than C, that they would strive for an Ultra C score. Therefore, Tsuburaya Productions chose their first television series to be named for what had come to mean to the Japanese people to strive forward for the best they can be, Ultra Q. The Q stands for the unknown, or is it the question, to uncover the mysterious truth of the monsters that would appear in each episode. After the success of Ultra Q, Tsuburaya immediately began working on the next entry in the Ultra series. This time they came up with Ultraman, a show that now showcased a hero from the stars that could combat the unknown monsters that would appear each week. This hero was as tall as the creatures he fought, but he didn't just appear from out of nowhere. He dwelled among a team of humans who would investigate the monsters that threatened their nation. It was only when humanity had given everything they had to contain the chaos of the giant kaiju, one member would slip away from the eyes of his companions and in private take out a capsule of light, raise it to the sky, and flash its light over himself. And in his place a giant red and silver man appeared, a paragon of protection and guidance, who appears to take on humanity's failings upon himself and to look humanity to follow behind him as he protected them from evil forces so that humanity would evolve into something special. The show Ultraman became the face of the Ultra series, so much so that some have forgotten about its predecessor, Ultra Q, but even so, Ultraman ended its run in early 1967, and shortly after came Tsuburaya's Ultra 7, another series that showcased another giant red and silver hero from the stars, and again hiding amongst the humans, only appearing when they had exhausted all other options. But this time the threats were no longer just against the mysterious kaiju now alien invaders threatening the Earth, and offered a more intelligent adversary compared to the chaotic force of the unknown kaiju. The world is like an uncivilized island compared to what's known by the alien invaders. Ultra 7 explored the terror of invasion, the merits of diplomacy, and asked what it looked like to resist domination of a greater power. Humanity's one ally against the invaders was an alien himself, and just like Ultraman before him, Ultra 7 saw something special within humanity, something beautiful, and he would protect them from those that would take it for themselves. These 3 shows, Rob, Ultra Q, Ultraman, Ultra 7, are the cornerstones of the Ultraman series. After Ultra 7 had ended, the Ultra series took a 5-year hiatus, and within that time, E.J. Tsuburaya passed on. Tsuburaya Productions found themselves in a slump without their leader, but they were determined to go on and strove for excellence just as they had done before, and they decided they would put it all into one new project that would either save them or be their end. In 1971, on April 2nd, the Ultra series was reignited with the show Return of Ultraman, the 4th show of the Ultra series, and it is here, at the Return of Ultraman, that we first meet the now late Jiro Dan, as the hero Hideki Go, a young man with a bright future. During a disaster, of course, relating to rampaging kaiju, Go rushes to help a small boy escape from a collapsing building and returns the boy to his mother, and only then does the young man collapse from his injuries and dies. A new Starman, also calling himself Ultraman, from the same origin as the first and Ultra 7, saw the courage of Hideki Go and offers the dead man his own life, that he might hide amongst the humans as his predecessors had before him, that he may protect this world from danger, and that the young man might live forever. The overwhelming success of Return of Ultraman on Japanese television would cement Ultraman in Japan's pop culture permanently. It is truly because of the Return of Ultraman that this series became the long-lasting legend that it is, as it is still going on right now, Rob, and it doesn't look like it will ever end. After the Return of Ultraman, 4 more entries were made in the Ultraman series. Those, together with Ultraman, Ultra 7, and Return of Ultraman, made 7 heroes who have stood as pillars carrying the Ultraman series to this day, and now in real life, they who once were young grew old and then became sick, and has now died without Ultraman to offer him a second chance. The first pillar that was erected upon the cornerstones of Ultraman and Ultra 7 has had a great crack appear in it. I think we should all take a moment now for Jiro Dan. This is normal for every part of life. Every family, friend, and of course fandom suffers these same kind of cracks. The only way to repair them is to fill the cracks with memories. We mustn't forget the people that have encouraged us to be brave in the face of overwhelming odds, to remember to be gentle when rage burning within our own hearts, be it our own family or the stars of our imagination. Please, Rob, if you are able, or if my words have touched you in some way, please spread the word of the great Jiro Dan, the first of the 7 Ultra brothers to fly back to the star Ultra. Pray for his family and his nation. And even when a little darkness appears, that a little light shine brighter, and that his eastern star can still shine brightly to us, even here in the West. What a great letter that was. I'm glad I read that. I'm glad you made me read that letter. Let's hear it for Jiro Dan. I only have water tonight, but here's to Jiro Dan. By the way, all the Ultra series have, in the last couple of years, been released in great box sets. So if you want to delve into that and check out the Ultra shows, you can, which is terrific. So that's very cool. This next letter comes from Terry Cooper. And Terry Cooper says, his subject line is, I finished my first feature film at 53 years old. Hi, Rob and company. It's done. Finished. An idea I had in 2016, shot in 6 days with just under $10,000 and 6 years of post-production hell. I've been there. My first sci-fi feature, Off-World, is complete. Or abandoned, as George Lucas would say. By the way, I didn't say that. That was written right here by Terry. And in the hands of a U.S.-based distributor. Is it amazing? No. Is it perfect? Laugh out loud. Also, no. But as a sci-fi geek, since I was able to watch John Pertwee, I wanted to make a movie. So I finally made it. Would you like to see it? I'm not expecting any glowing reviews, as it's flawed in many ways due to my inexperience, but it was the best film school ever. So much so, I'm working on a new movie. If you'd like to watch it, please let me know. Best regards, Terry, Wales, UK. Come on, man, you didn't send me a link? Yes, Terry, I want to see it. Show it to us. Let us see it now. So yeah, send it on down, son. Let me see it. I want to see it. And by the way, congratulations. You know, I've often thought that everybody at some point in their lives should make a movie or try, because whether it's good or not, it's not the point. What you learn and how you approach the whole idea of making a movie and what can and can't happen, you got to try. I'm telling you, it's, I know it seems, but I definitely think that, it's definitely something that people should look into. You got to try it just to see. This letter, I have another letter. This is an old letter from February that I apparently didn't read. Let's see. I'm looking at who it comes from. It comes from Unreleased Lord of the Rings. Mr. Burnett, I have been working on a compilation of unreleased Lord of the Rings material. The first version has been on YouTube for 10 months. There's a link below. Well, okay. I will send everybody this link. Obviously, I'm going to put that, so I'll put this in the live chat right now. And you can see it. There it's on YouTube, so that's what you know what we're talking about. The first version had been on YouTube for 10 months, the link below, but I'm making another much longer version with tons of additional material, some of which is taken from a quite rare documentary footage and TV documentaries from 2001 to 2004 that were never released commercially. Since I know you were part of Michael Pellerin's team, which built the appendices, and since the 25th anniversary is what most fans are hoping for, will be the moment to see unreleased material, bloopers, and additional new documentary material, I was wondering if you have seen any indication this is being worked on. I know Michael Pellerin is working on something big. Additionally, if you have any thoughts on this, what is the future of the original documentary master files used for the extended edition? The behind-the-scenes footage and the interviews. Do you have access to them? Were you perhaps able to secretly save some of the original footage or audio tapes of the interviews for yourself? Michael has said there's at least 20 hours of documentary material that the team didn't use for the appendices, and I assume you and everyone who made the appendices would like that to be seen eventually, maybe even the raw, unedited material as part of a streaming option. Well, unreleased Lord of the Rings, what I could say, well, I'll say it. So for those of you who don't know, I worked for a company called Curdy Pellerin from 2000 to 2004, basically. And part of what we did was we did all of the special features for the extended version of Lord of the Rings, which took years. And I worked on the first two because there was a lull in time between Two Towers and Return of the King, where I actually jumped ship and I went and did Chronicles of Narnia. I went back to New Zealand for 14 months with my own company and my own team because Michael still had to do Return of the King, and there was just time between the two, and I was offered a job and took it. So, and that was fun. And it was a shit ton of money I couldn't say no to. So when we worked on the appendices, each, from what I understand, each Lord of the Rings extended version set, if you include the audio commentaries, I want to say has about 10 hours of documentary footage, which basically took a year to do. Each team, we had a team of people. There was like 30 of us, I think, maybe 20, 30. It took us that long to do each disc because there was so much work. It was insane. The work was insane. The audio commentaries alone were insane. The woman that was cutting them, I would walk into her edit bay and look at her timeline. And I blew my mind. So what I did, I cut a few pieces on those discs, but for especially on Two Towers, most of my contribution, I only edited one piece, the editorial piece on Two Towers. I was in New Zealand interviewing people, and I would interview people for hours and hours and hours. There's hundreds of hours of interview footage that didn't get used. I've famously told people that on Fellowship of the Ring, I interviewed Christopher Lee for 5 hours at the Dorchester Hotel. 5 hours. And there's probably 20 minutes total of that interview that appears on Two Tower or on Fellowship. Somebody, I don't remember if somebody re-interviewed him for Two Towers. I didn't, but somebody might have. I think Brian Sibley might have in London. But yeah, 5-hour interview. And Peter Jackson, Michael Pellerin interviewed Peter for each movie for like 15 hours. There's not 20 hours of footage. There's hundreds of hours of footage no one's seen. Hundreds. And the Lord of the Rings, there are so many deleted scenes, and they went down. The thing about the Lord of the Rings movies is they were able to try things, and if they didn't work, they had animatics. They'd gone a long way down a road, and if they decided not to go down that road, they just pivoted and did something else. So it's not so much deleted scenes, and there's a lot of those, but there's also scenes that they just realized didn't work and decided to do something else because those movies were very iterative. Now, from what I understand, the last time I talked to Peter Jackson had gone to Warner Brothers and said he wanted like $20 million to do a brand new documentary, and they told him no. So it is possible that since then, and I last time I talked to Michael, I want to say it was maybe a year ago, and he was telling me that there's certain things are happening, but nothing was, who knows, but so 2026 would be the 25th anniversary of Fellowship, And, they've already released the 4K versions. And so, I mean, unless they even remastered those, because I know that there were certain things in them that were a little wonky, but I really, honestly, I don't know anything about any of that stuff. And I did not keep, unlike some other projects, I didn't keep anything because I'd never had control of the footage. I would do my interviews, I'd come home and deliver the footage. And I believe all the footage actually went back to New Line. But there's hundreds of hours of interviews. So it's a good question. And I don't know. I mean, I would hope. Here's a problem. The studios just don't have the money to all DVD special features. And like back in the day between like 2000 and 2008, there was a lot of money floating around to make special features because the DVD format was so lucrative. And they thought a lot of credit was given to special features. So that's why they spent a lot of money making special features. But unfortunately, those days ended. And the money for special features came from the marketing departments of the studios because that's what they were considered. It was considered marketing money. And there was a lot of money there. So they were able to pay. Now that money just doesn't exist. They don't have that money. So that's why they couldn't, as much as they might have even wanted to give Peter Jackson $20 million, they could never have justified it because where would that money come from? And that's the real problem. Where does that money come from? So it's a good question. Good question. Here's a letter from our friend Omar. Omar94. Omar94 says, "Hi Rob, moderators in the Post-Geek Singularity. This is something I've noticed for a while now, but something I don't find very artistic is music videos. Let me just say for the record, I'm not trashing current music videos because they're still very well made, but there's just something lacking about them in terms of creativity. I thought about this when I looked at music videos over 25 or 30 years ago, where they're well made and they do their job, but they lack something creative and artistic about them. However, if you look back at music videos from the 1980s, whether it's Michael Jackson's Thriller, Paula Abdul's Opposites Attract, and Aha's Take on Me, they were really well done and filled with a lot of imagination, like the rotoscoping from Take on Me or the Roger Rabbit live-action animation style of Opposites Attract. Every time I look at these and compare them to music videos over the last 25 or 30 years, I always think how people just don't make music videos like that anymore. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I don't think music videos are very creative these days, despite them still being well made. Thanks, and live long and prosper." Interesting. Well, I would say this. I mean, look, again, music videos essentially, when MTV came on the scene and over the course of the 80s, music videos became high art. And you had people like David Fincher doing incredible work in music videos, or Mark Romanek. There was so many great stuff. And you had music videos that had huge budgets. And the bigger bands were able to do anything they wanted. And they were pioneering new techniques. They were doing all kinds of things. You had all these enfant terribles coming, like a propaganda films, when you had like Dominic Senna, and you had Michael Bay, and you had David Fincher, and one big ad agency and propaganda. I mean, it was a great time. The problem with music videos is they don't have nearly the budgets. So they can't do the incredible camera work or the incredible visual effects, or they have to have really stripped down nowadays. And also, music videos are no longer the cultural force that they were in the 80s. I mean, music videos really, they took popular music in directions that we'd never seen before, and part of that was because of music video clips that they could play in clubs and all that. So it's just a different world. By the way, one of the most fun books, I mean, look, I'll admit to you guys, I do a lot of bathroom reading. I have stacks of books in the bathroom because from the time I was a little kid, you go into the bathroom at night, nobody bothered me. Till I was like 13, my mom's like, "What are you doing in there?" And I'm like, "Not what you think, Mom. I'm reading the new Star Trek novel." But I did some of that, but you know what I mean. What are you going to say? Most of the time I was reading. But so I'm always reading something. And one of the most fun books, one of the greatest bathroom reads ever, is I Want My MTV, the oral history of the first 10 years of MTV. It's great. So I don't know if they have an audiobook of that or what, but I never buy audiobooks, but it's great. You should check it out. It's good stuff. I want my MTV. Tom Jr. Jackson gifted 1 Burnettwork membership. Thanks, Tom. I really appreciate that. That's great. Thank you. Zequinox says, I enjoy your banter. I love your show. Well, thank you very much, Zequinox. And I like the fact that you have Snake Plissken as your avatar. President of what? 101 Johnny says, thank you, Rob. Well, I'm glad I was able to find that letter. So 101 Johnny, thank you. Ron C says, hey, Rob, money for writers. How about cutting back on marketing, cut back on films that come out months after its initial date? Just adding for the conversation, is it possible? Thoughts? Great to see you nightly. Peace. Well, Ron C, that's, borrowing from Peter to pay Paul is always a good idea. Curtailing costs when you can. But I would say that who knows when something is, marketing is just as important. I mean, the thing about writing is part of the production budget of the movie. I think, unfortunately, there are other areas of production that has been inflated too much that they need to pull back on, like producers' fees for various reasons. But I think that, cutting back on certain areas is probably going to have to happen. The people that actually make the properties should be the ones getting paid. And there's a lot of people now that get a little bit of a taste, and we've got to curtail that. The Producers Guild has been fighting against that for a long time. So, yeah. I agree with you. I think that's a really good point. Unfortunately, you have to figure out everybody wants to get paid, and no one's willing to give up anything. So it's kind of a bummer. But yeah. Mickey O says, this is deep stuff. Well, it's Robservations. Sometimes I'll just rail about Star Trek. But tonight I just, and a great Mr. Evan Newman sent me that article. I want to read it. And I like our girl Naomi. She's always compelling. And it just got me in not quite a vendetta kind of mood, but, something to talk about. Mike Valenzuela says, do you think a studio director will have the confidence to throw $150 million at a new DBZ live action movie? This story is ripe with familial lore and not unlike Star Wars. Build this universe over many movies. Probably not. Because, it's not, here's the thing. There's so many great stories that are out in the world, but the question is, can you make people care about them enough? And I think that, Dragon Ball Z is if you were to make a Dragon Ball Z movie and you were to make I assume that's what you're talking about. Dragon Ball Z has a lot of great lore. I've missed out on it, I know who Goku is and stuff, but I only because I was a little bit older. But I think, from what I understand, it could be a great franchise. I just don't know if they would put $150 million into it because, one, not a lot of anime properties, look at Ghost in the Shell, didn't do very well for a number of reasons. And I think that the problem with, if you were going to do a faithful adaptation of Dragon Ball Z, a lot of American audiences might not dig it, but I can understand. If you could do it cheaper, I could see doing a Dragon Ball Z TV series for that, like a live action, full blown series. I don't know so much about a movie, but that doesn't mean it can't happen. Maybe it could. I don't know, but it would be interesting. It would be interesting to see. Our friend Sonny Dominguez, I won't say, Sonny Dominguez says, you spoke how the current social climate, racial divisions are orchestrated. I agree. Despite people loving movies and shows that highlight such activity, House of Cards, Game of Thrones, many say that would never happen in real life. Any examples to prove your theory? Well, not really. I don't know if I could necessarily point to any examples, but, look, if you want, I don't have the research in front of me, and I believe there's a great documentary. It was on Netflix about algorithms and how social media is being used to program us. And to me, here's what I go by. This is going to seem maybe a little irrational to people. Well, I've read a lot of science fiction in my life, and science fiction writers, science fiction as a genre, has always held up a mirror to our present day culture and how our present day culture is going to move into the future. Where great science fiction writers will extrapolate on something that's happening today and where it goes into the future. I do not think that it is much of a stretch that the one thing that we have been given in social media is that nowadays we now have, for the very first time in human history, most people around the world are carrying a phone. They're carrying a phone. And they are getting information from this phone. Now, never before have we been able to disseminate information to people better or faster than this. And if you want to change people's minds, now you can quantify with data sets who people are. Like, I'll give you an example. Where I used to live when I was married, where I used to live on the edge of a place called Hancock Park in L.A., we had a Ralph's grocery store there. Well, the Ralph's grocery store knew that we were right on the edge of a pretty affluent area of Los Angeles at Hancock Park. The Ralph's grocery store could tell by the people that were buying stuff. They knew what their demographic was, and they knew, like, for instance, if they had really nice fresh fish or something, it would get bought. And you could find out that Ralph's grocery store could compile all kinds of data about their customers, that particular Ralph's, and I'm sure all supermarkets do this. They could send circulars, in your mail or whatever, and they could target the demographic. And then they could look at, if you were to combine what Ralph's was selling with information about, say, real estate prices within and that Ralph's was on 3rd and La Brea, so which is a street in LA. If you were then to go, say, a 5 square mile radius outside of that Ralph's, it wouldn't even have to be that big, but just take what people are buying and look at the real estate prices, which are pretty high up, you could suddenly figure out, if you owned a grocery store, what you could coordinate, like what kind of wine you could sell, knowing what would you, and there was a lot of, obviously, also things like a big Hasidic community. So the Jewish community there, you could get kosher wines or whatever. You'd know what you needed to service the people that you're dealing with. And this was something that used to fascinate me 25 years ago. And I always thought it was really interesting. And I remember reading an article about supermarkets collating the data of their shoppers based on all kinds of different factors. Well, now we're carrying around devices where all of our everything we do is charted. So with large data sets, and if people wanted to target certain like-minded, if you wanted to get a message out that you'd want to target like-minded people, you can target them directly and put that message in their phones based on what they're scrolling through. So and that's what they've got. So our entire society is being manipulated and controlled through data sets. Now, I'm not saying there's some nefarious purpose behind it, because at the end of the day, the frustrating thing about it's all about money and control. That's it. Everybody wants to be rich because we're here for a finite time on the world, and the world is life is much more fun if you're incredibly wealthy, because you can do whatever you want. And the rest of us spend our lives in quiet desperation. I know for me, if I had bought a lot of crypto 10 years ago and sold it and had $8 billion, like literally $8 billion, what I would have done with that movie is, first of all, I would have gone to Star Trek and offered to, or I would have gone to Paramount or CBS and offered to buy the Star Trek franchise for like $3 billion. Just because I had it, I'd still have $5 billion left. But in all seriousness, the only reason I'm not doing what I really want to do, which is make movies. I'd like to continue to make movies my whole life. I've never made a movie that was a big commercial success. So I have no power, and I know that if I was allowed to generate something and go make it on my own without anybody else's help, I could probably do well. Now, if I had $1 billion of cryptocurrency, I would just start a production company and I would make 20 movies. And I'd make movies the rest of my life. The only reason I don't is because I'm not rich. I don't have access to that money. When you are rich, you have the power to do whatever you want. So at the end of the day, all of these data sets and all these things are doing is making sure that the elites, the people at the top, and I'm not even against the elites and the people at the top. Somebody has to be that way. It's been that way since the dawn of time. So the people that are incredibly wealthy stay incredibly wealthy while they manipulate the rest of us. And it sounds like I don't even have a problem with it. That's just life. Because most people, most human beings, and I mean this in the very best way, we're not exceptional people. And there's very few of us that are. And the people that are able to manipulate the world at that scale with that kind of money, they know how to do things that I'm not even interested in doing. And most of us aren't. Most people just want to raise their kids. They want to live lives of, people want to pay for their health care. It's not hard. And so when you have a global system, you now can move mountains in a day with data sets. I get it. I understand that kind of manipulation. The interesting thing is, I know that manipulation is going on. And I look at it and sometimes I'm like, okay, we're all being manipulated. The real question is the people that fall down the rabbit holes that don't realize that we're being manipulated. That's the thing I don't understand. I've read too much science fiction, and I've read too many other things. Anyone who's really aware, I have conversations with people that I'm just astonished that I'm like, why do you believe this? And I think because you haven't read enough science fiction in your life. I've heard people tell me these things and I am shocked. I'm like, how do you not know that you have fallen down a very constructed rabbit hole that was built to ensnare you, an ideological rabbit hole that was delivered in a very specific way, and you have found this group of people and you've fallen right into this hole. There's too many people that are being manipulated that way all around the planet by forces that are doing it on purpose. Look, the United States itself, this country, is under attack 24/7 by bad actors. I'll call it out. Iran, Russia, North Korea, China. Call it what you want. They are taking apart our civilization piece by piece. And all of these things that have happened. Look at the last 10 years. Look at the social hot button issues that have happened. Some things, they were never hot button issues until 10 years ago. Why? Well, basically around 2012, for instance, there's certain technologies that suddenly didn't exist before that have allowed people, they can't defeat us militarily. So our civilization is under constant attack 24/7, ideologically, socially, all kinds of things. And if you look at it, if you just do some cursory research, you can find all of this out. You can find it out yourself. And the frustrating part is Americans are not smart enough to know that that's happening to them. And it's a bummer. Like, do you think that all Americans are in the wake of use the guns as an example? Somebody blows up or tries to blow up a plane with their shoe, and almost 25 years later, we're all still taking our shoes off the airport. Yet there are mass shootings almost on a weekly basis in this country, and we still don't do anything. Why is that? Because people are such gun advocates? Because the First Amendment? Well, that's part of it. But also it's because we are being given a constant drip of this particular issue to keep Americans divided against one another. And we're being programmed. The arguments, people just give if you listen to people arguing about what the Second Amendment means, it's like you listen to people's arguments and it's almost as if they've been programmed together. They all went to the same school and they had to recite the same things at the end to graduate. All of that is conditioning. And do you think anybody wants us to solve the gun problem in this country? I'm talking about bad actors. I'm talking about external forces. Our country is being systematically taken apart on a daily basis by bad actors that can't defeat us militarily, so they want us to tear ourselves apart. And by the way, we're doing it for them. We're doing it for them because we are not, because they've done a great job, and we are at loggerheads all the time. All the time. And we've been conditioned that way. Now, is this something I can prove? No. Is this something I believe? Yes. It's something I believe because it's just marketing. I mean, you look at what advertising is. I mean, it's a constant psyop by people that the Chinese and especially the Russians, they created psychological warfare, and they're just using it on us. Hell, people internally are using psychological warfare on us. I mean, it's just that I happen to believe it's going on, and I try and not allow it to affect me. But it does get frustrating when you run up and you try having conversations with people that they can't even, it's worked so well that they just parrot other people's ideas. They parrot other people's ideas that you've heard. You even follow back where they came from. You can find wording that people have used from years ago that has been parroted back over and over and over again. It's all propaganda. And I got to say, brilliantly done. And Americans, because of our free society and our Constitution, has left us very susceptible to it. More than I think any other people in the history of mankind. So it's a great dichotomy. But anyway, Sonny, I can't prove that. I just believe it. And does that bum me out? Yes, because at the end of the day, we're not being allowed to progress as the one race of human beings are one race of people. We have different ethnicities within the one race, but all of this, people staying rich and all that, has held humanity back. And if you look at the culture wars that are happening in this country now, we were on a nice path. We are on a nice evolutionary path. Things like same-sex marriage were becoming legalized. There was racial inequalities that were being solved. We had lots of things going on. Things were getting better. Look back and see when a lot of it went off the rails, which was after 2012. The question is why? And to what end? And it's a bummer. Now everyone probably thinks I'm crazy, but hey, I'm just saying. Joe Panora says, when I become a billionaire, I'll buy Star Trek and make you the Grand Poobah of Trek. Hold me to it. I will hold you to it. You know what? I don't know. I would just like to go out and make a couple of great Trek movies or something. And I think it'd be great. And you know what's interesting? The story that I did last night on the Ote stuff, the tone of those things, I know it's, but the way they feel is how I want to feel about modern Star Trek. I mean, I feel like when I'm watching Strange New Worlds, I'm watching this weird, like I say, Vegas showgirl version of Star Trek. I don't believe it. It doesn't feel, I mean, if you watch modern Star Trek and compare it to the way things like look at, it's weird because like nowadays I think of like Alien or Event Horizon. The way the characters act, and I use Alien and Event Horizon because they're ships. The Event Horizon is going to rescue the Event Horizon. It's a mission to do that. But the way people act in those movies, they act like real adults. I don't believe the characters in Strange New Worlds. People are like, I like it. I'm like, you like it because you're watching this weird pulp bastardization of Star Trek, and it's fun to watch, I guess. I just don't believe any of it. I don't believe the way the characters are written. Anson Mount's a handsome, charismatic guy, and all you have to do is give him some brooding speech to say, or it's like, what's the mission? To explore. And people are like, yeah, that's what it is. Give me a break. Anyway, that's just me going off about Star Trek. It is the Vegas night. It is the tonight at the Wynn. See Vegas's #1 show, Star Trek. Hot girls, a hot captain, evil Gorns that bust out of people's bodies like xenomorphs from Alien. You never know what you're going to see. It's colorful, it's wacky and loud, and it's fun. It takes Star Trek to a whole new level. Star Trek at the Wynn, Vegas's #1 show. That's what I think of modern Star Trek. That's what Strange New Worlds is. And I'm supposed to be like, We watched those 3 movies, the Ote films. That is a story about Yeoman Colt, a character introduced on Pike's Enterprise that they didn't put in the show. Why do you think they didn't do that? They took, why is there a descendant of Khan, Nooney, and Singh on the Enterprise? And that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Like, that's so Kiva Goldsman. And I'm like, somebody should have said to him they can't because he'll throw his Academy Award down. But give me a fucking break. I mean, seriously, really? Yeah, Khan Nooney, and let's steal Uhura and Nurse Chapel and Dr. Mbenga, and let's take all these characters. What about Dr. Boyce? What about Colt? What about the characters that were actually there? Why'd you have to steal a bunch of original series characters and put them on there? It's just ridiculous. 101 Johnny says, it's a crazy world, Rob. I know many crazy people. I know. And I'll tell you something. The social media world, as soon as everyone's carrying around a brainwashing tool of manipulation in their pockets, hey, what can you do? So, yeah. Thomas Logan says, I picked up a DVD on Prime this week, an underrated gem, co-starring John Delancey and Seth Green, a little movie called Arcade. Tell us about it, Robster. Okay. So in 1993, 30 years ago, I had two friends, one of them being Dave Parker, who you've seen on Midnight Metal 30 years ago. So Dave Parker was working at Full Moon, and my friend Dan Schweiger, who I'd known at that point for 3 years, was working at Full Moon. And they were working basically in promotions. They were cutting trailers. They were doing behind-the-scenes stuff. And so Full Moon was basically releasing a movie a month distributed through Paramount. And they were making a movie for $1 million a month. And they were making the Subspecies movies. And they were making the Trancers movies. And they were making the Puppet Master movies. And they were doing all these movies. Charlie Band, who used to have Empire Pictures and made like Reanimator and From Beyond and Dolls and all that. So there was a movie called Arcade. And Arcade was directed by Albert Pune while he was directing Doll Man. He was directing two movies at the same time. He was directing Doll Man and I think it was the original Doll Man. It might have been Doll Man versus Demonic Toys. But so he would go from literally one set to the other, and he was directing two movies at the same time. One of those movies was Arcade. Arcade was a Tron ripoff, where an evil video game was sucking the kids that were playing the game into the game to compete on the game grid, a la Tron. And it was written by David Goyer. Yes, that David Goyer. So what they wanted to do was they shot the movie like all Full Moon movies were. They were shot in 35 millimeter, pretty well actually, shot pretty well. And then in the game, all the game stuff was done. They shot it on Betacam, Digibeta. I think back then it was just Beta. No, it was Digibeta, Betacam. And so what they did was when you'd go into the game, it looked like videotape because it was. And all Full Moon movies, they didn't edit negative. They didn't cut, for the most part, they didn't cut negative. They did like a lot of TV shows like Next Generation. They would transfer the film to tape and edit on tape and deliver because they only had to be on VHS and that's it, and Laserdisc. But Arcade was literally edited in about 10 days. And Peter Billingsley was the assistant editor, Don't Shoot Your Eye Out Kid from Christmas Story. And then the effects were terrible. Absolutely terrible. So Paramount they looked at Arcade and they rejected it. They said, this movie is so bad, we are not going to release it. And so for 2 years, Arcade sat on a shelf. It didn't get made. It didn't get finished. So Dan, my boss, Dan Schweiger, and my friend, was hired the thought was they still had to deliver Arcade to Paramount and release it because they owed this movie to Paramount because they were, Paramount was partially paying for these movies. So they had to finish it. So Dan was given this movie, and the thought was to retransfer the negative and then have a new company make much better effects and drop them into the film. And they needed somebody to do that. So they brought back Peter Billingsley, the actor who was also looking to make movies and get into post-production. And Dan Schweiger hired me, called me up and said, listen, would you help Peter Billingsley reconstitute this movie? I'm going to have new effects done, and I'll drop them into the film. And I'm like, that sounds pretty cool, because I had been working at Altarian Studios, and the jobs were ending. So I'm like, okay, I'd love to work for Full Moon, for Charlie Ben. They had this incredible facility. They're making a movie a month. You never knew when you were going to be able to direct or write or whatever. I figured it'd be the greatest thing ever. So I go there, and so they transfer the footage, and we start looking at all the dailies. And we have all the footage that we're looking at, and I'd watched the movie. The movie was just god-awful. And I'm looking at the dailies, and I said to Peter, I go, there's a lot more here than you guys even cut together. There's scenes that you never cut together. And he said, well, I had to cut the movie in like 10 days. We didn't have time. And I'm like, yeah, but there's a much better movie here. And he said, well, do you think so? And I said, yeah, there's a much better movie here. We should just recut the movie. And Peter's like, well, we can't do that. And I said, well, why not? Nobody said we couldn't do that. They just said that they're going to drop, we're going to recut that. We're going to put the movie together the way it was with the better transfer and drop in this new footage. Why can't we recut the movie? I mean, all we can do is make it better. And Peter's like, well, I don't know. So I call up Dan, and I go, Dan, we could recut this movie. And now, up to that point, I had cut short films and I had cut some music videos, but I'd never cut any major narrative in my life. But I did get an A in editing at USC. So I called Dan up and I go, Dan, why don't we just recut this movie? And Dan's like, come on, Bob, you can't just recut a movie whenever you want. You can't just do that. And I go, yeah, but this movie's terrible. There's nothing we can do to this movie that's going to make it worse. We can only make it better. So Dan went to Charlie and Albert, his father, and rented up the flagpole, and they said, okay, fine. You guys will give you 2 weeks, something like that, and you cut the first 10 minutes of the movie and give it to us. And the visual effects were still being done, and they hadn't gotten sucked into the computer in the first 10 minutes. So we did. And I have to tell you, we took something that was completely unwatchable, and we made it really mediocre. But it was watchable mediocrity, and it was totally different. There was nothing unchanged. We changed the entire film. It was like a totally different. I mean, it was still what it was, but we made it cohesive and coherent as much as we could. I mean, don't make no mistake. I mean, it's not a great movie. And then we also, so they looked at it, and even Charlie Brown's like, how did you do this? And I'm like, bro, I mean, it's all right there. And I don't even think we ever looked at the script. We just went by what was shot and tried to make it as coherent as we wanted to. And then what was really interesting, we would get in like a shot, one of the effect shots would be like in a stone corridor with these things on the walls, and you'd see this energy bulb called like that. And that was the shot we got. And because we were finishing on a video, I said to Peter, if we have one shot, we can just use, in post-production, we can just take the shot and use it again and turn it this way. And then, so the ball could go, we could turn one shot into 3 because it's a video game, And so we did all kinds of stuff like that. We started rewriting the dialogue of the monster, David Goyer's dialogue. So Peter and I spent 6 months re-editing the movie, and then we took the movie all the way through post-production. Anything we needed to learn, we did the sound design with Alan Howarth, who worked with John Carpenter on all of his movies. If we didn't know something, we'd go take the guys, we'd go to our colorist, the post-production house, and we'd take them up to Gino's East, or what, not Gino's East, what was the pizza place that's on the corner of Lancashire and Vineland. Why am I drawing a blank on it? But we'd take them up there and give them pizza and beer and ask our stupid questions, and in the course of the pizza and beer, they wouldn't realize that we were asking these stupid rudimentary questions that everybody probably should know, but we didn't. So that's what we did. And we took the movie all the way through post-production, and that, lo and behold, it was nominated for Best Independent Direct-to-Video Release in 1993. And it lost to another Full Moon Kids movie called, I want to say, Dragonstone, something like that. I don't remember. But it was really vindicating, and that was the beginning of my feature editorial career and learning how to make movies. I mean, so even though I'd worked at Warner Brothers, but yeah, that's arcade. Arcade, man. That was it, dude. That was it. Arcade was the shit. So, Thomas Logan, if you think it's an underrated gem, God bless you. It was. I will always look back on that movie fondly. Maria Espino says fan-created content is out here saving franchises. Oh, and it will be. We need a list of fan-created Star Trek. Yo, let me just say, my days of working on fan-created Star Trek, as anyone knows anything about my life, knows I am never doing that again. Even though I am proud of the fan Star Trek I did work on, and if we were not sued, I would have been able to direct a good Star Trek movie. I think. So, for those of you who are going, wait, what? Go look up a movie called Prelude to Axanar, directed by Christian Gossett. It's on YouTube. I edited that film, and I had a lot of creative input. And then I was going to direct the feature. We only made one scene from the feature. It was a proof of concept scene. It's called the Vulcan scene. Axanar, the Vulcan scene. Go find it. You can look at it and get back to me. Tell me what you think. But that was years of my life that was turned into a nightmare. Shellcrow sends in a chat and says a super chat and says the best description of ChatGPT I've heard is authoritative BS. I've asked it for coding and half is incorrect. Date night recommendations, half are closed. We have been trained to trust Google. This is different. Oh yeah, ChatGPT it's rife with errors. I wouldn't use it for those kinds of things, but I mean it's coming. It's coming. Jake Damon says, I loved Red Letter Media's review of Picard Season 3. Those guys know what's up. I love all their content, but Star Trek reviews hit different. Well, Mike, he's such a Star Trek fan. I discovered Red Letter Media, I want to say over 10 years ago, with their review of, even before they reviewed the prequel trilogy, they reviewed the Ford Next Generation movies. And their review of it was Plinkett, this movie is as stupid as my son. Was this the best? I watched that Generations review. I must have watched it 20 times. I love Red Letter Media. I love those guys. I'd love to stream with those guys. I never have. I don't know them. Zachary Zabale, is it Bay or Bailey? I'll just say Bailey. Says Temple of Doom has always been my favorite while everyone praised Raiders and Crusade. Now everybody's all about Temple of Doom since Short Round won the Oscar. Boo. My two favorite Raiders movies are Raiders of the Lost Ark and Temple of Doom. I am not a fan of Last Crusade for a number of reasons. I don't like what they did to Sala. I don't like what they did to Marcus Brody. I think the movie's goofy. I mean, I understand I love Sean Connery and all that. I think I can't stand the cheap visual effects. But anyway, I am a fan of Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is a near perfect movie. And I love Temple of Doom. Love Temple of Doom. So, yes. What that says about me, I don't know. So what else? You know what? I think I'm going to bring this one to a close, man. I started this at 8 o'clock? I think I started this at 8 o'clock, which is crazy. That is nuts. But yeah. Anyway, that's it. I want to thank everybody for supporting the channel via Super Chats and tips. I also want to thank people for sending in letters. If you want to send a letter to me, right down below, postgeeksingularity.com. You can send me a letter there if you want. And I'm trying to get back on the routine of reading them. I'm backlogged. If somebody has sent me a letter and I haven't read it, don't take it personally. So all of that, I want to thank my moderating staff. I want to thank Tom Jr. Jackson for being here. I don't know if anyone else is here, but Tom, you're the best. He does great work. So, yeah. Anyway, that's it. I think this was a great. I'm glad I got to talk more about AI. I'm happy you guys are all here. Fun show. I will get back to more entertainment related content. It's just been, with the strike on and everything, and there hasn't been much I've wanted to discuss movie related. But there's a lot of stuff I can't wait to talk about, like Oppenheimer and Fast X, and I'm looking forward to seeing Little Mermaid. I still haven't seen Guardians yet. I know. But anyway, on that note, we're going to end this show. And remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I would say to everyone, have a better day. And I mean that sincerely.